Hello, Dr. Manel, and thank you so much for joining us today. You shared so much information with us in your webinar, Soothing the Storm, Co-Regulation Tools for Caregivers. And I'd love to just chat about some of the concepts that you shared. Does that sound good today?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Perfect. We get a lot of questions from parents and caregivers through our website and our peer support groups, and I hoped I could pick your brain on some of them as it relates to co-regulation specifically, not only from the kiddos' perspective, but the parents and caregivers. So you talked about a lot of great strategies, like understanding the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain and how that kind of plays into things for kids. But I loved also the concept of staying calm, curious, and connected as the parent or caregiver so that you can help them regulate in the moment. Then you mentioned connect, correct, then redirect. And I'm going to take us a little deeper into that too. But I loved how your presentation really walks us through how to become an emotion coach for your kids when they're dysregulated. So, the first question I have is more general. Do you think that many of the strategies that you suggested in your webinar are good for all ages?
Absolutely. Not just all ages. Use this with your partner, your spouse, your coworkers. It's a strategy that works for everybody because we're basically using brain-based strategy to help calm people's nervous systems. And so it
Right.
works for any age. It's just the language we use obviously is going to be a bit different. So when I'm talking to a younger child, I'm going to use more basic, like you're mad, sad, scared. Whereas with an older adolescent, I might use more complex things like you're worried, you're disappointed. With my coworker, depending on which kind of word I'll use. But yeah, it's a strategy that works across the board.
Okay, so really just being aware of the language and the situation. And I love that actually kind of pointing out using it with your coworkers, for example, because we don't always have to practice this with our kids. We can actually practice it with other people in our world so we get better at it with our kids.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
delivered a training once and it was like a 2 day training and I tasked people with going and practicing this at home. And they came and they're like, I practiced this at home with my partner. And it went so well because what was a difficult conversation typically and an argument, we were actually able to have a productive conversation because when you're validating someone else and showing you understand it, it puts their upstairs brain back online. It kind of
Yeah.
helps calm our nervous system.
I love that. No, that completely makes sense. And I know a lot of parents, might not think to do that. So it's
Yeah.
a great suggestion. You talked a little bit in the webinar about figuring out your child's temperament.
Yeah.
Can you give a couple of suggestions on how parents can do that if they don't really know what that is or how to find out a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff online, but you know your child's how adaptable they are to the world.
Mhm.
So I think most parents could figure out how their child's wired. So from the moment they come into the world, are they easy to soothe or tough to soothe? There's some kids who need such regularity. They need to eat at a certain time, they need to go to bed at a certain time. If something is different, they're very reactive. And then there's other kids,
Yeah.
you could throw them in the car, you could take them anywhere. They're like fine, they'll sleep when they need to sleep. So there are some kids who, if they overheat, you have to pay attention because if they're uncomfortable, they're so fussy. You get a sense of how adaptable your child is and how easy they are to soothe. And I go back to those emotion thermometers. It really does start as a baby because our kids tell us how they need to be regulated. If they don't
Yeah.
calm, we know they need a little more support. So I think the key is just thinking back to how adaptable they are, how quickly they adjust, how slow to warm up they are, how good they are to change and novelty.
And I love that thermometer imagery because really, does your kid's thermometer go up quickly or does it take a while for it to go up? Or do they need a little more to bring it back down? And I know from my experience, my two boys were both extremely different and I had to parent each of them based on that, right? So thank you for those suggestions.
I think that
Um,
that's a really important point because I think there was a period of time where there were parenting strategies that were provided that were supposed to be universal. So if you do these
yes.
things, your kid will be a well-adjusted, whatever. But that doesn't take into account wiring. And so it's so true. Two kids might have the same wonderful parent, but they need different approaches based on what their temperament is.
100%. And I think we get really focused as parents and caregivers on being fair. And if we're doing this for one kid, we have to do it for the other. And I think this challenges us to think outside of that box.
One thing I like to say is fairness isn't about treating both kids the same. The fairness is each kid's going to get what they need. And that's
Exactly.
being fair, is being able to see them for who they are and meet them where they're at.
I love that. When you were talking about the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain, I thought I'd love to have some more examples about how, as a parent or caregiver, I might not know when I'm in one or the other. So, can you give some examples of what a parent might be feeling or experiencing
Yeah,
with?
I actually had it in the presentation and like I was worried about time. But a great example that I think many parents could relate to is if you think of a time. So I gave my mole example, which now like the
Yeah,
whole world knows about.
I know.
But
It was
another
a
great
great example, though.
Yeah. Another great example, though, that a lot of parents can think about is think of a time where you've lost your child, like in the mall or a public space where you can't see them. So
Oh my
your
gosh, the
downstairs
fear.
brain takes over, right? You are in panic mode. You are just getting it done. You're looking, you're thinking, nothing else is going on in your head but finding your child.
Yeah.
Then you find them. Typically, it's not like our upstairs brain comes right back online and we're like, okay, carry on, my child's safe. What ends up happening? We might yell, we might get mad, that's not a logical connection to what the situation is. It should be like relief. Our upstairs brain is back online. Great, we found them. But our downstairs brain is still revved up and we need to calm ourselves to get back online. So I think that's a really good reaction. Or I will
Yeah.
tell you, because I know every parent has kind of a button. And for
Yeah.
some, it's when kids talk back. For some, it's when they're
Yes.
in a rush and we're trying to get somewhere and they're kids being sluggish, or for some, it's when you're out in public and a child's not complying, whatever it is. In those moments, your upstairs brain is coming offline when you feel it in your body. Your body starts tensing, your heart starts racing. And so it's in those moments, your alarm is being triggered. There is a threat. And that's when you have to take a step back and say, okay, I feel this in my body. I need to get my thinking brain back on.
I know for me, when my son with complex needs struggled, I went right to worry. So, in the moment, whether it was at home or in public or whatever, I would start to respond more from a place of worry, like, oh, if he keeps doing this, he's not going to have healthy relationships. He's going to struggle at a job. And I went to future worry. And then when I realized that that's what I was doing, it helped me to slow myself down and just remember to be in the moment. And that was crucial.
And yes, it's that grounding. And I have to say,
Yeah.
again, it's not just with parenting. I know with the holidays approaching and the snow, traffic has been bonkers. And I
Yes.
find myself, if I know I'm going to be like a few minutes late, something's happening, I feel it in my body. And then it furthers my alarm. I'm going to be
Yeah.
late. What's going to happen? Oh my goodness, I'm going to walk in late. Why are these people driving like this? Like it spirals. And so some of the tips in there, so the
Yeah.
deep breathing, 100% I use all the time, but also the grounding techniques, bringing myself into the here and now. So, okay, I'm noticing the feeling of the steering wheel. I'm taking a deep breath. Sometimes I personally like, if I'm wearing perfume, to take a smell of my perfume just to bring my senses, but it's to bring
Yeah.
myself to the here or now. What's going to happen when I get there, I'll deal with then in the here and now. So similar, the example you gave with your son, it's like
Yeah.
I have to deal with the here and now. We'll deal with the future next, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, not the moment to do
Yeah.
it when everyone's dysregulated. And I appreciate what you shared about us as the caregivers needing to be calm. What if you're a caregiver, though, who also has some emotional dysregulation challenges? And so some of these strategies might be difficult to access if you immediately go into the wrong side of the brain, right? The downstairs brain gets triggered and you are dysregulated. How can parents deal with that? They might not be able to access it in the moment, but what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think the first step is awareness. So being aware that we're wired in a certain way and our downstairs brain, and also being kind to yourself about it because our
Yeah.
alarms, we come into the world and our also our life experiences impact how much our alarm gets triggered. So that's very real. That's very natural. That's very normal. So once we have awareness of it, we can start to, it's about building our basket, right? Learning
Yeah.
strategies to empty our basket. So being more aware of the self-care, being more aware of what our triggers and buttons are, and coming up with a proactive plan. So if I know a big trigger for me is when my kid says no or is rude, then I'm going to plan in the moments. I'm going to start making requests differently. If I have a kid who jumps to no first, I'm going to use a lot of that validation first to help. So I'm shifting already how I'm interacting, but then I'm
Right.
also going to mentally plan ahead of time. So I might do some of that deep breathing. I might tag team if I do have a partner or co-parent who can help me. The
Hmm.
other thing, though, that I think is totally okay is being able in a calm moment to have the conversation with your child. Hey, you know what? Kids understand this even at a young age, the hand model, when you
Yeah.
explain the upstairs brain, downstairs brain. And so, even being able to explain, like after it's about the repair too. So, maybe I haven't
Right.
been my best self, or maybe I wasn't super calm and able to co regulate. It's coming back to my child and saying, hey, you know what? I think my upstairs brain came offline too. This is tough stuff. We're going to try to do this together. And then being able to take space. So once you've kind of had that conversation in the moment, you could be like, you know what? I need to take a minute to get my
Yeah.
upstairs brain back online so I could help you get yours. So I think it's about transparency.
I love that. And also vulnerability. And I think that a lot of us were raised in an age where, as a parent, you didn't show your emotions or else you were showing weakness and you needed to be strong for your kid and clear on boundaries and all of those things, right? That are sort of the more traditional past versions of
Yeah,
parenting. And maybe that works for some kids, but there are a lot of kids that that doesn't work for. And I know with my kids, when I did apologize for a mistake I made, or when I was feeling emotionally dysregulated and I just called it what it was, that built a trust, I think, in our relationship. And the repair was so much easier to engage in afterwards, right? When you can both share with each other how that felt.
absolutely. And there's like lots of research from ages ago, but that show like kids learn from models who
Yeah.
experience, like if you're feeling afraid, who feel afraid and then overcome it versus someone who's just confident to begin with. So
Yeah.
being able to model that for your child, it's so human. And it's showing them, hey, this is possible and we're going to do this together. So it takes away shame.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you mentioned single parenting a minute ago. Well, you mentioned trading off with a co-parent, right?
If you
And
have one, yes. If not, it's harder. Yeah,
right. And so what would you recommend for those folks? Because I know I was a single parent and
yeah,
it was hard. And I would take moments where I'd say, you know what, I need a moment. And I would say, I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back, and
absolutely.
the bathroom was my saving grace. But what are some other strategies where safety might be an issue, or as a single parent, maybe you are the emotion coach, you're calm, you're in your upstairs brain, but then you start feeling yourself switching to the downstairs brain and you're becoming a little emotionally dysregulated. What can single parents do in moments where they need to be the emotion coach because there isn't someone to switch off with?
Yeah, I think in the moment, the number one concern is safety. So if there is an immediate, like your child's having a full meltdown and they're not being safe, then you
Mhm.
need to just get it done in your fight or flight mode, whatever it is. Safety is number one, right? So you need to
Yeah.
be able to do that. Then I think you could take a step back. I think, firstly, like the deep breathing is the number one thing. We should be doing it regular. Like I know even when I was doing the presentation, I kind of tried to do it because I get worked up. So you want to stay as regulated as you can. But I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing for a parent who's on their own doing it is making sure they have a big support network for debriefing after. So you're going to handle the crisis in the moment. You're going to do what you can. If you weren't your best self, you're going to repair after because you're human and you're doing it on your own. But the biggest
Yeah.
thing for single parents is definitely to make sure you have that support system. So whether it's through organizations like Parents of Children's Mental Health or other support groups, or if you have friends outside or family or anyone that you could debrief with, and being able to just say, oh my gosh, sometimes my kid's a pain in the butt and it is so hard. Being able
Yeah.
to be honest and talk about how you're feeling is so important. And that goes a long way in helping you stay regulated in the moment.
100%. I was a single parent for several years, and my son that struggled would have those difficult moments. And I had a couple of friends that I had prearranged with that when there was a difficult moment, they could come and pick up my younger son. And that happened several times. Then that was a huge support to just remove my younger son from the situation when it was needed. And then I could focus on my son that was struggling. Then I'm not worrying about both in the moment, but that isn't always possible for folks. So I appreciate what you said there.
No, but I think that's also a really important thing too, to that you could proactively plan with is
Yeah,
having, if your kids are old enough, like obviously each situation's unique, but
for
it's also
sure.
having a conversation. So you're right. If you have two kids and one's wired one way and one's another, and it's really hard for you to attend to both, maybe it's coming up with a plan together. So when your kids are calm, it takes away the shame. But to
Yeah.
the child who struggles more with their emotions, hey, I know it's harder for you. You get these big feelings. And when that happens, it can feel scary. And so, other son, what plan can we have? So, when you see your brother starting to have those big feelings,
Yes.
maybe you could go to your room and read a book, and I'm going to come and spend time with you after. And sometimes it
Yeah.
might be problem solving proactively where you can.
Especially when it's become a pattern and you
Yeah,
kind of know it's probably going to happen
yeah,
again because you have a child that struggles. Yeah, no, I agree. The next thing I want to kind of dig into a little bit is the connect, correct, and then redirect. And I love the simplicity of some of the strategies, the way you pull them together so simply. But I want to talk about how that might feel for some parents, like you're kind of letting them get away with poor behavior.
yeah,
When we talk about connection, that's not necessarily validating poor behavior, but I want to dig into that a little bit more because
yeah,
I know in my experience, when we talk about giving kids the benefit of the doubt, like understanding that they'll do better when they can,
yeah.
it leads most of us to worry that we're letting them get away with things. So, how would you talk to parents and caregivers who might have that worry?
So, I mean, I could talk at length about it, but I guess it really depends on each child and family situation how I would talk to them, because I would want to understand their child to help them understand where it's coming from. So I
Right.
would encourage all parents to stop and think about their child that they love so much who sometimes has these difficult behaviors, and ask
Yeah.
yourself why. Why would my child want to push my buttons? Why would my child want to be in trouble or to do things where they're going to get into trouble? Our kids want to please us. Our kids want love and attention and praise. And so, why are they doing it? When I talk, that's why I think it's so important to really emphasize our brains aren't fully developed till we're 25. Kids are narcissistic beings by nature of their downstairs brain. They are focused on getting their needs met and they are looking at the adults to do it. They don't
Yeah.
have a ton of ability to be able to like self reflect. And so sometimes their behavior, it's really, we make it more complicated. They're intentionally trying to push my buttons, they're trying to manipulate me.
Yeah.
It's actually more basic. They're trying to get their need met. And their need might be, I want this. You said no. Now you're blocking me getting to my goal. It might just be that simple. But if we could see it as an unmet need, we could then understand that our job as a caregiver is to help them learn how to get that need met in a more adaptive way. They're
Hmm.
not going to learn that if we just punish them. That teaches them what not to do, but that's not the
Yeah.
issue. The issue isn't what not to do. The issue is how do I get that need met in a healthy way? And sometimes that's just tolerating the frustration of no, I can't meet that need, get that need met
Right.
right away. How do I deal with that feeling and the disappointment? So if we shift our thinking to what's underneath the behavior, what need are they trying to get met, and how can we as a caregiver teach them, then we could come at it with empathy, saying, I get it's really hard when you can't get that need met, and this is how I'm going to help you learn to deal with it. Because at the end of the day, our goal is not just to have kids who comply with rules and punishment. We want kids who are healthy, adaptive beings who make good choices and who know how to regulate themselves.
Right. So rather than looking at it as a punishment reward situation, like I'm rewarding poor behavior, I should be punishing instead, we're looking at what is the need that needs to be met here and how can I support them in getting that met in a healthy way? So that really is a mind
Like
shift.
teach them. It's about teaching. It's a
Yeah.
mind shift. And I have to tell you, I've been doing this for many, many years. And
Hmm.
I do know it really does counter. I'm Generation X. We were feral and ran in the streets, and we were told no,
Ditto.
and that was it. And no one
Yeah.
was teaching me anything. But what I will say is that if we kind of look at it from a teaching perspective, it's not about giving in. So if my kid is upset, validating their feelings. So my kid, let's just say, hit someone on the playground because they wanted a toy. Validating and saying, I get you were angry. It's not rewarding it. It's saying
Right.
you were angry. And this is
Yeah.
how we're going to deal with anger. So we're not encouraging the behavior. And it depends on what the situation is. So if they hit, maybe once they're calm and we've taught them how to deal with the anger, maybe it's so we're really disappointed right now. We're going to take some space. And then after, maybe it's, and you've hurt Sally's feelings. So how are we going to fix that? You could teach them how to then repair some of the things
Hmm.
that have happened. That definitely can be a step. But again, that's that redirection or correction. It's not punishment, it's teaching
Right.
them what to do instead.
I love that reframe. Yeah. I appreciate that. And when you talked about the emotion coach section, they had you had the four steps,
Yeah.
and the meet the need of the emotion really stood out to me as exactly what you just defined, right? We're trying to help them identify their emotion and teach them healthy ways to manage it and respond to it because we all have emotions.
Yeah.
So thank you for that reframe. We get a lot of questions from families who are co-parenting from two homes. And there might be some aggression or just the emotional regulation might be problematic in both spaces or just in one and not another, right? And so, what would be a couple of tips for a family that might be in that situation?
Yeah, I think it's hard, but consistency is the most important. So if two parents can come together to co-parent by like, if you are watching this, get your co-parent to watch it too. Because
Right.
if everyone's speaking the same language and doing similar strategies, that
Yeah.
helps the child's thermometers start to develop. Something else though is that you kind of, so that's my number one thing is everyone should be doing it similarly. When that
Right.
doesn't happen though, sometimes there's conflict, and sometimes you only have control about what happens in your house. You do not have control over what happens in your co-parent's house.
Yeah.
And so it's really focusing on what you can control.
Yeah.
Also though, this strategy of emotion coaching can really be used for having any sort of conversations with kids or adults.
Yeah.
So difficult conversations. It's going in with that validation, like, hey, Vicky, I understand that sometimes it's really frustrating for you when I tell you how to parent Bobby, and there's different behaviors and we come at it from different places. And I get that it's really hard because you have your way of parenting. And I see that Bobby's really struggling. So I'm wondering how we could work together to figure out the best path forward. So it's about coming in, acknowledging what's going on for the co parent and validating as far as that can be, and then
Yeah.
helping to try to use those skills to come together. I know that's simplifying it. These are complex situations,
For
but
sure.
my main advice is doing what you can in your home, trying as much as you can to get both parents to be doing something similar, and also acknowledging, you said one thing I just do want to highlight: kids come wired in a certain way, and different environments will bring out different parts of those recipes. So it
Yeah.
is totally normal and understandable for kids to show different behaviors in different settings. It might be they act one way at school and one way at home or in two homes. It doesn't mean they're being intentional or manipulative. It
Yeah.
means something's happening in their emotional basket in one setting that's different than another, and that's
Yeah.
okay. So I do want
I
to
love
say
that
that.
you, yeah, no, I appreciate you pointing that out because that was certainly, again, going back to my own lived experience. We were a family of divorce, and what I was dealing with in my home was very different than their father's home. And that was looked upon as I must be doing something wrong as the parent in that environment, right? And so it was really difficult to get on the same page to support my son with his needs because it was seen as something I must have been doing. And I think there's a lot of families in that scenario when there is conflict, right? And
Of
the
course.
reality of our kids just being capable of being different in different environments is actually a reality. So I love that you
100%.
validated that.
Yeah, no, it's that recipe. Like it really is the recipe. And when the child's in a different environment, the ingredients are different because there's different
Exactly.
things about it. And also their relationship. Like I will say too, just because a kid shows difficult behaviors with one parent and doesn't with the other, it doesn't speak to closeness because sometimes when kids also feel safer and aren't in freeze mode,
Yeah.
other behaviors start to come out. So
Yeah.
you see different behaviors in different settings, and that is really just elements of the environment. It's nothing about the parent themselves necessarily.
That's so validating for many folks who are probably listening or watching today. I want to wrap us up on calm, curious, and connected because for me, that is such a beautiful way to sum up what your goal is, right? The state you need to be in before actually being able to support your child or youth who's dysregulated themselves. Any last thoughts on how parents and caregivers can support themselves to be regulated in those difficult moments that
Yeah,
you
I
haven't already mentioned?
Well, I think I'm bringing up the curious again just to bring up. I think our world and society puts a lot of pressure on parents, and you brought it up a few times. There's a lot of
Mhm.
stigma, especially when you're out in the world and your kid is being a kid. There's a lot of
Yes.
stigma. There's so much pressure. And I think that pressure of being a good parent, being a perfect parent, having this healthy adult, like all of it, I think there's so much that parents get. And the truth is, there's no such thing as a perfect parent because
Yeah.
we're complex beings ourselves, our kids are complex. Unfortunately, there's no rule book, manual, app that we could do. And you could do everything right, but there's all these other outside
If
influences.
only.
Yes, exactly. There's all other factors that impact your child too, in addition
Yeah.
to their recipe and makeup. So I think it's about giving yourself a lot of grace and understanding you're human. And as
Yeah.
caregivers, we're doing the best we can. And so, you know what? If this time I mess up and don't do it so great, there's always next time. So it's about taking that curiosity. And so
Yeah.
after a moment, reflecting back and being with curiosity for myself, I wasn't my best self in that moment. I wonder what it was. What do I need to do to empty my basket? How do I get my basket a bit bigger? So I think really being able to have that curiosity and openness for ourselves too is
Yeah.
really important because I'm giving you all these things. I get that. And I tried to say, it's not a one side. You're not going to do this once and be like, oh my gosh, Wendy said I could do this and just it would be right. It takes time, practice, and patience. So that calm and curious is for ourselves as well as it is for our child.
Absolutely. And that brings self-compassion in for me. And so much of that is what we need to give ourselves. And one of our volunteers uses the language, I nailed it, and then in hindsight. And I think that's such a really gracious and forgiving way to think about how you handled a
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, I love
And
that.
it looks at both. So I nailed this, but in hindsight, here's what I would do differently. And I encourage folks to think about that. And on that note, I think connecting with peer support also is super critical if you're dealing with kiddos that are struggling, because, like you said, it is very stigmatizing. And as parents and caregivers, we are up against pressures that I know for myself as a trained child and youth counselor, I was so hard on myself. Like, I can help others, but I'm
Sure,
struggling at home with my son. And why isn't this working? And a lot of people sometimes did look at me and say, well, you do this for a living. Why isn't your kid
of course.
perfect, right? And so it's a lot of pressure for families, and the media's hard on us, chat rooms are hard on us, all of these spaces that we bump up against. So I want to leave folks today with remembering what Dr. Wendy Manel said is be kind to yourself, be calm and curious with yourself, and then that'll help you connect better with your kiddo. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Manel,
you.
for joining us on this topic. And thanks everybody for listening in.